On the 12th day of Christmas, namely 90s came to me. 12 Rangers morphing, 11 ghosts possessing, 10 Keenan scheming, 9 orphans playing, 8 Urkels geeking, 7 twins a-twinning, 6 sliders sliding, 5 fruit cakes, 4 time loops, 3 young kids, 2 prophetic dreams, and a refrigerator day bonus.
Welcome to Namely 90s. The podcast that takes you back to the time before smartphones, Google, and Y2K. Join your hosts as they relive the pop culture that shaped a generation and the parts that many people wish they could forget. Listen in to the conversation about how the decade defined those who spent their childhood there and how it shaped them as adults. So, turn down the grunge and dial up the internet. Let's get started. It's time for Namely 90s.
That's right. You're listening to Namely 90s. My name's Andrew, and over there is Brandon.
It's morphin' time.
Yeah. As usual, you can find us online at namely90s.com or on Twitter and Instagram at namely90s with a 90s. Perfect. This show is also available on YouTube at namely90s.com/YouTube. And finally, if you'd like to support the show, head on over to patreon.com/namely90s with a 90s. Join one of our support levels. Oh boy, it's been quite the run. We are on the 12th and final episode of our second annual 12 Days of Christmas specials.
You said it correctly.
Yes. And as usual, to introduce our guest for no apparent reason, and it bothers Brandon tremendously, is Brandon.
You know who our guests are this time. You took away all of the intro. It's kind of fun just to have you say it.
We have Taylor Swift here to talk about her new album. Wait.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Oh wow, we do have Taylor over there. No, Happy New Year, everyone. This is the first day of January 2022. If you've decided to listen to us on day one, please, I hope you do. The things attached to my wrists are Zeonizers. That'll come into effect later. But we have brought SteampunkLink and EmmyZero from SNEScapades on to talk about Power Rangers Zeo's Christmas episode. But more on that later. I'm going to make sure my Zeonizer doesn't go off again. And hi, Link. Hi, Emmy.
Hello.
How are you?
Thank you for having us here. We're good. It's great to be here. It's been a weird one. I think it's fair to say. We're here and we're going to talk about this Power Rangers episode. I know you said it's morphin' time, but is it? Is it really?
It's always morphin' time, and while we are all getting out our toys that are Power Rangers related and make noise.
Oh, is that the Dragon Dagger?
That is the Dragon Dagger. I always keep it handy. Never know when you might need it.
I also brought my Japanese Mobirates from Super.
Hold on, I'm going to try to morph into someone who gives a damn. Oh, no, sorry, just kidding.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention Andrew hates Power Rangers.
Oh, boy.
What Brandon's doing here?
This must have been extra fun for you.
Brandon's by the way, it's one of the worst episodes.
Yeah, one of the worst episodes.
Oh, gosh, it's classic.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. What is wrong with you?
I'm a child.
Okay, fair enough. Nothing wrong with that.
No, I mean, I highly recommend watching. I think it's the 35th Super Sentai series, Gokaiger. It's relatable. Space pirates.
It's the best one.
It is the best one. It's the Japanese version. But we're not here to talk about Power Rangers or Super Sentai yet. We're here to talk about SNEScapades, or as I always say, SNEScapades. Wait, no, I don't say that.
SENS.
SENS. Yes, I also get dyslexic while saying it. No, NES, Super NEScapades. It's SNEScapades, right? That's how you pronounce it. We've been on your show. You've been on our show. You came on our show. Originally, Link sent us a congratulations on our 1 year anniversary. You kind of dived into this thing where we would have like a hypothetical land of all 90s nostalgia, which Andrew and I kind of perverted into like a 90s con. And then you had us on your 200 game review episode, celebration episode, because the 200th review is in the previous episode, if I'm not mistaken. And we came on to kind of flesh that idea out, and then the rest of your guests also contributed their special thoughts on the matter. We also had Shalena from Everything 90s on this for our 12 Days of Christmas specials, which she was a guest for that as well.
Oh, cool. Which one did she do?
She did the Family Matters episode on the 28th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was still envisioning like a 90s theme village, not necessarily a con.
Right. I mean? Yeah, that was the original idea. And then it kind of turned into like, hey, what if it was a convention? Because that's something that could possibly be done.
But you look at, there's these towns. We have like this little Bavarian town. Well, Leavenworth.
Oh, yeah. Leavenworth.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, why not? I mean, they just lost Oktoberfest. Why not make it a 90s town?
So it's like Leavenworth, but you've got, you got the Spencer's Gifts. You've got, the Sam Goody, all the restaurants are
Circuit City.
Right. Yeah. And everyone lives in like subdivisions that are like pretty well maintained, but definitely looked better in the 70s.
Grass is too high.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember the store Best back in like the 90s?
I don't think we had that where I grew up.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
I feel like I vaguely remember Best. I don't know.
I don't remember.
It was like a low rent Sears in North Everett. It was so bad. Yeah, now it's like part of the hospital.
We didn't
I grew up in St. Louis and we had Venture. It was like a department store, kind of like Target. It's called Venture.
Oh, very cool.
That place was really cool.
But before we get too off the rails about Washington in the 90s, can we ask you what, for those of our listeners that don't know, what is SNEScapades all about?
I could just give the spiel that I give at the beginning of each episode. We are a what is that spiel? How does it go? It's weird not just jumping into an episode now and having to recall it.
You gotta work on your elevator pitch, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Two friends embark on a chronological journey to play, review, and rank every Super Nintendo.
It's something like that. Yes.
Exactly. We play them briefly. We judge them harshly.
That sounds familiar.
That's pretty much all you need to know. Yeah. We rank them, and that's pretty much all you need to know. Basically, we started with the very first Super Nintendo games released in North America, and we've been playing every game released, with a few exceptions where we couldn't quite get the technology to work right. Basically, we're up to, I believe, almost exactly 2 years into the Super Nintendo's lifespan now. And we're gonna keep going all the way to the end. We do a few games at a time, and we just have like a fun conversation about them. We kind of go into their history, and then we talk about our experience playing the games, and we put them on our list.
So I do have a question. I obviously the most recent episode I listened to, because this is recorded before the first of the year, obviously, and we actually had to delay by 2 weeks. So the last episode I listened to was the 200 special, and you mentioned that you were thinking about getting into playing the Super Scope games. Which is
we're going to do that eventually.
Super Nintendo.
We had Joe from SNES's Life come on. He does a Twitch stream where he and his son, who's gone off to college now, so he's not there anymore, but they were also going through the entire Super Nintendo library chronologically, and they were probably going a little deeper into the games themselves, where we just try and kind of give like an overview and a little historical perspective. But yeah, so he's still got like an old CRT that can actually use a light gun. The first time that we came across a Super Scope game, I think I tried emulating it, and it works okay, but it's like it was very clearly like not the same experience.
Okay. Well, because like the thing that you can do very easily in emulating light gun game is have it substitute just like the mouse cursor for the light gun, which it works. You can technically play it, but it's not really like the intended experience, and it's super easy pretty much to cheese any game you play that way. So we kind of decided to hold off on those until we had like a better solution, whether that's getting to actually use like a real Super Scope with a CRT, or if we figured out some better way to do it through emulation that would give us a better experience.
Head on down to the thrift store or like one of those recycling places and try to scope out. Or like a school.
Aurora Avenue.
School. Just
they always
roll
have
out
that
the
cart.
AV cart.
Right.
Yeah.
The library might have one you could use.
That's a good idea, actually. Yeah.
They probably won't like the noise though.
I go to the library to use the internet exclusively. Just kidding.
We will probably just end up emulating them anyway, but now at least we've had the perspective of somebody who got to play them legit. And so I think, hopefully we can use that as a sort of jumping off point for our discussion on them. And we'll just, our idea at this point is just once we get to the next one, we're just going to try and just blaze through them all in one episode, just get them out of the way, get them done. And
Good call. Another thing about your 200th episode or your 200th review, extravaganza, I forget what the actual title was for that, but review celebration episode. You also asked the people that were coming on what games that we saw on the list that might deserve to be a little bit higher. Andrew, I don't know if I mentioned this, but we managed to move NHL 94's position up 3 spots ish.
Yeah.
I don't know how it worked out by the end of the episode with all the other shuffling, but I was impressed that we managed to get it that high.
Well, what we actually ended up doing, because you asking us to reconsider NHL 94 kind of caused us to reconsider a few games around it too, in relation to that game and each other. So it was like a pretty, I feel really good about how we ended up at the end of that. So thank you guys for stumping for that game. Definitely.
I mean, it's the one Super Nintendo game the two of us can agree on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like it's number 37 right now. So
nice. Yes. We appreciate you taking that into consideration.
Yeah, no problem. We appreciate you guys coming on to chat with us. So.
And one more cool thing that I love about your show is you have the episodes where you look back at Nintendo Power. Like the old Nintendo Powers that are like released with how you're going through the chronological list of NES release games. Super NES release games, excuse me. And like I'm a huge Nintendo Power fan. Had I had the foresight to know that people would be like collecting Nintendo Power magazines in the future and looking back at them, I wouldn't have tossed them away like a few years ago.
See, Brandon had Nintendo Power. I had Cat Fancy.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I mean, who's to say which one is a better document of its time in history?
I definitely held on to my Nintendo Power magazines longer than Andrew held on to Cat Fancy.
Indeed, I turned them into cat litter.
Yeah.
I have held on to a few of my magazines from back in the day. I've gotten rid of a lot of them because I have not really wanted a lot of physical media, and like you can download the entire archive of Nintendo Power pretty much from the Internet Archive now, so you can just have them all digitally.
Oh, good. But then I don't feel bad about tossing mine in the recycling.
Yeah, but like a couple of them I have held on to because they were special for one reason or another. Like the original Final Fantasy strategy guide has some really cool art in it, and is also just like I think it was the first one that I got when I started subscribing. I did get like all the back issues pretty early on, so I do have a copy of the number 1 with Mario and Wart from Mario 2 on the cover.
Ooh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
The classic cover.
Yes, and just a couple others. I'm actually kind of getting ready to send some of the less special ones to me off to Frank Cifaldi at the Video Game History Museum. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. And so where are you currently? Like still in 1992-ish?
We're in 93. We're kind of midway through 93 right now. So
all right. That's cool. So obviously that really relates to our subject matter with the 90s. And I always try to make sure to include any Nintendo game and any like major other video game that's released when I do our travel back in time segment in the beginning of our shows. So that's cool. And what else? I had do you want to share any holiday memories before we get into Power Rangers?
I don't know. Do you have anything?
I don't know why, but I have a very strong memory of getting a stuffed Sonic the Hedgehog doll when I was like 8, and
traitor.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of playing both sides at the time, but I kept that thing with me all through everything we did at Christmas that year, and it I think deeply annoyed several people because I would make sure it was like at the table with us and everything. So that's my holiday. That's fun.
Sonic gets a seat at this table. He's part of this family.
That's right.
I mean, he made it into the pages of Nintendo Power with Sonic Adventure 2 Battle.
Yep.
Finally, yeah.
So I will advocate for Sonic after Sega dies.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Actually, I guess one thing that sticks out to me, especially if we're talking video game related stuff, would be I think the year I got my Super Nintendo, I also got Mario Paint with it around Christmas time. So that was a very good Christmas. That was actually again, growing up in St. Louis, the year that I got the Super Nintendo for Christmas was the year that two other things were going on. One, I had a really horrible teacher in elementary school. And two, we had some really nasty snowstorms that would drop like 7 or so inches of snow on us. And like this happened multiple times throughout that winter. So we got a lot of snow days. And so my friends who like lived in the neighborhood and were close enough that they could just walk over to our house, we would just take those snow days. We'd be like, all right, we just played a bunch of Super Mario World. We're going to make a bunch of Goombas out of snow. So we built like this Super Mario World themed snow fort. And that was a good winter. It was a good winter.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Andrew?
I'm not sure if it's the holidays specifically, because I can't remember, but my brother had a friend who had the Nintendo and the light gun, the original NES, because I had a light gun, I believe, as well.
It did, yeah.
I had a light gun.
I just remember the mom in the house smoked extrely heavily, and they also had one of those like radiant space heater, like satellite dish things in the corner. And I have like really vivid memories of this weird smoke-filled Nintendo house, and I have no idea why.
Was that your brother's friend from our block?
No, it's in Pioneer Trails. Remember Pioneer Trails?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, where like 70s rich people lived, and then they died. And
yeah, I also had the gun for Duck Hunt.
Yeah, that was the NES light gun, the Zapper.
The Zapper,
smoking next to an unwatered Christmas tree. That's safe, right?
That's great,
yeah, definitely.
With the space heater like oscillating next to it. I'm like, this is not good.
Not to disparage our friends who lived over there, but why does it seem like most of the people that lived in that neighborhood did that?
It's like, it was like rundown fancy. It's like, oh, it's the 1970s, but you have a 3-car garage, so you seem kind of bougie, like I don't know how to describe that.
Well, those
Brandon squints like, heavily when I say bougie.
Yeah, those houses were probably like really, really state of the art when they were brand new, but now it's like, now they don't have like quite the amenities. So it's like, these don't have like central air conditioning or whatever, don't have proper heating, so we have to have all this all this stuff heating it up and everything. But yeah,
our houses were the new parts of the new development when that went in. So
you guys were the fancy ones.
Yeah, now they're the old ones.
I keep forgetting you guys were like friends since you've been like 2 years old or something. That is kind of
I was 2, he was probably 3.
That is kind of mind blowing to me. Like the idea of like having a friend for that long is like unfathomable to me because I have moved so many times within my life.
Well, to be fair, we were moderately estranged friends until we started doing the podcast.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Well, not in the sense like not on purpose, mostly just because we live far away and it's like,
right. Yeah. You move and, like you don't have time to just like, I'll just call people up, especially like, okay. If you're a guy, you're not like supposed to just like call up your guy friends to chat on the phone. And I hate that. I have
a friend who does that.
Okay, good. He should do that. We should normalize guys just talking to each other on the phone. Like, nothing wrong with that.
So what you thinking about?
Exactly.
Yeah, we usually have to find something like Rocket League or some sort of terrible video game to play while chatting.
I mean, I know so many people that started playing Destiny this last year just so that they could like interact with their friends in a way that like would allow some structure, So yeah.
That's fair. But I mean, I was the best man at his wedding. While we're getting all the lore dump. But he had kids and a wife, and I'm single and in California. Yeah. So yes, we didn't hang out as often, but I wouldn't say we were estranged. I would say.
No, I know. I was just being obnoxious. Yeah. Don't mind me.
Speaking of obnoxious, in 1990, I want to say 3, but it's probably 4. Haim Saban brought over a brand to America that he eventually named the Power Rangers. It was from Japanese footage of a series called Super Sentai, specifically Zoo Ranger, and that created the Power Ranger craze for 3 of us, and apparently Andrew's always a stick in the mud. But what are your memories of Power Rangers, Link and Emmy?
Emmy, you want to go first because I might be a while.
Yeah. So I remember seeing commercials for Power Rangers before it came on Fox. When they were kind of hyping it up, and I was like, "What is that show? That looks really cool." They're like superheroes, but then they have like a robot and it fights monsters like Godzilla. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I was there like right from the start. I watched a ton of original Power Rangers. I was really into it. Saw the movie in theaters. And then after a while, I think probably somewhere kind of around like the start or kind of the midpoint maybe of Power Rangers Zeo, I kind of started to fall off of it. Okay. So I didn't watch as much of it. I would kind of check in on it from time to time, but I was getting a little older and it wasn't keeping up with some of the same stuff. I was getting more into things like Star Trek and stuff like that. And then, kind of as an adult, I realized there were like 20 Power Rangers series I had never seen. So my wife and I, who we both like this kind of stuff, started kind of going through some of the older series, and we found a few that we ended up like really thinking were like a ton of fun. And I've watched some Super Sentai stuff as well, and I like that. I like pretty much all the Super Sentai stuff. I've actually taken the time to like really get into. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm down to clown with the Power Rangers, definitely.
What were your standout seasons when you did the watch later on in life?
The big one for us was Power Rangers RPM, which was the like go for broke. It was like the last time that like one of the companies that has owned Power Rangers had the rights to it. So they just sort of went nuts with it and made this cool, like kind of like dystopian sci-fi action series that used the stupidest robot designs I think Power Rangers has ever had. These like cars with animal faces on them.
Yep.
And it's a great show. It's really good. But we also liked Mystic Force a lot.
That was surprisingly good.
Yeah, Mystic Force, I think, made great use of the New Zealand stunt talent in a weird way. But it's all fun. It's all a great time. I think we watched Dino Thunder as well fairly recently, and that one, it's okay. It's all right. It's got Tommy in it. That's kind of cool. But yeah.
I wanted to point out that RPM, I believe, was the season that had like Rose McIver.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
In it, known for like a bunch of like ghost dramas or zombie and ghost dramas now. But, and then the Red Ranger was in the Jessica Jones first season.
Dang, you're right. I didn't think about that, but you're right. He's super wise. So
crazy talented cast from that random season.
That's from that random season of Power Rangers.
Link.
Okay, so I was probably a little bit too old for Power Rangers when it came out, but the show still super appealed to me anyway for some reason. So I was also not terribly popular at school, like pretty much ever until high school. And I kind of found my niche, which was singing. And so I would mostly play with like neighbor kids who were like a little bit younger than me, like between my brother and I's ages. My brother was younger than I was. And so when Power Rangers happened, we all got really into Power Rangers. And it just so happened that among myself, my brother, and our neighbors, we just happened to have like 3 guys and 2 girls. So like we could all map to a Power Ranger almost perfectly. So we just kind of adopted our own Power Ranger personas, and we would just pretend to be Power Rangers all the time. We all had our own little power morphers and everything. And like to this day, I'll collect some like old school Mighty Morphin stuff, and I don't even think like, oh, that's not Trini. That's like Joy, the girl from the girl from down the block. Like that's just kind of like how much I associate the Power Rangers with that group of friends. And awesome. After we moved a couple years after that, that was around the time when Zeo started happening. So between the fact that I didn't have those friends around anymore, and also like Power Rangers was changing a lot, I kind of fell off of it at that point. So I know a little bit of Zeo, like a lot of Mighty Morphin, and that is pretty much it. I've not really gone back to the series except for like this sort of Mighty Morphin revival that has happened in the past couple of years with like the comics and the new movie and the board games, all of which I have just eaten up because I think that what they're doing with the old Mighty Morphin stuff is pretty cool.
The Boom Studio comics are fantastic.
Yeah, the Boom Studio comics are awesome. I've got the board game from Renegade Studios that I'm still kind of waiting for COVID to die down enough that I can get a group of people to play that with. But
if you're doing an online version of like an RPG Power Rangers thing, I feel like you're talking with someone about that in one of your episodes.
Oh yeah, because I was saying that I thought I had heard that Renegade Studios was doing like a Power Rangers D&D. It turns they totally are doing that. So. Yeah.
If you're making a podcast out of that and you're looking for people to hop on, I would force my way into that.
Okay, all right. We might do that. We'll see. I really need to get my hands on the book to see like how that whole thing is, because honestly, like ordinarily tabletop gaming is absolutely not my bag, but for Power Rangers, I might be convinced to maybe pick up some DMing skills and try this out
for sure. Andrew, you stated at the top you hated Power Rangers.
I didn't really watch much of it.
You hate Power Rangers and everything good about the world.
I feel like my brother was older and I think convinced me pretty early on that it was super dorky and lame.
Okay.
So of course, as a younger brother, needed to have the approval of my older brother. So couldn't like it.
Whereas
weird, I don't feel like my younger brother ever needed that.
I was kind of a tag along. Like I always wanted to. How different were you in age?
About 3 years, I think.
Yeah, we were 4 years, but I feel like he was always trying to shake me, but I was just kind of followed him around for a while.
Yeah, I've shared on the podcast before. Like I watched it from the beginning, and I would, on occasion, when we were all playing outside, would make an excuse that I had to go inside at 4:30 for dinner or something, and then just go upstairs and watch Power Rangers on our
And this
TV.
family always ate at 5, by the way.
Yes.
You weren't fooling anybody.
Yeah. I was like, I have to, I'm a little tired today. I got to go in, play, go do something. And yeah. And that made it into like the Turbo year. Well, Turbo was on Saturday mornings, but yeah, I watched through In Space, which was the end of the Zordon arc.
Right.
Technically. And then I probably kept watching through. I know I watched Lost Galaxy, and I think I watched SPD. If I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. So this will be interesting because you'll probably know better than I what the implications of this episode that we're going to talk about are, and whether or not it's even possible that this could be the case that the episode is presenting.
The framing device for this episode is wild. Like, just the idea that they thought this was a good idea is incredible to me.
Well, it's the 90s. We've watched the Power Rangers Zeo episode, A Season to Remember, which is technically the 50th, I believe, episode of Power Rangers Zeo.
Yeah, so I think it ended up being broadcast as the 50th.
Yeah, it definitely exists somewhere around episode 13 or 14, like chronologically, since they lose their powers at the end of Zeo. Sorry, am I cutting you off from saying this?
No. Sorry, okay. I just had some like really loud traffic going by my house for a second. They did the. Because I think technically this is all happening before like the Gold Ranger stuff happened.
Yes.
Okay.
This is probably if you look at their one Jewish friend, he appears in an episode somewhere around 14 or 17.
Is he not a ranger?
No.
They're actually very careful in this episode to not say anything around him that would suggest that they know more about the horrible little robot gremlin that's come to make them feel bad about each other than they do.
I have to say, I was quite impressed with the hypothetical quality of the video that we watched, that we may or may not have watched on a hypothetical site.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
The hypothetical rip of this episode was quite...
If one were to watch it, it may have been.
It would have been
good,
of reasonable quality.
Yeah.
But the framing device, I forgot about the framing device. It's in the future. There's an old man, which played by Jason David Frank, who's a grandpa with his son, and I think it's supposed to be Tommy.
Yeah, with his grandson. Do you think that was actually Jason David Frank in that wig until the last scene? Like, do you think they just like?
I think it was.
You think so?
He looked young, even in the last scene.
It was him the whole time.
The thing is, that's a grandpa voice isn't just more gravelly; it's usually a little strained. Yeah. And then I'm just why didn't Bob Saget just play the voice? I mean, I'm just saying. It would have made more sense.
And like the whole time I'm thinking like, oh, show us old man Tommy, show us old man. I want to see the old man makeup. And then they didn't even do anything. Like they
kind of tried to smooth his face out more, I think.
Which seems the opposite of what you would do for an old person.
I mean, they gave him gray hair. They gave him gray hair.
Botox.
Yeah, they did. It looks like they gave him Botox. Like it's like they put like a bunch of pancake makeup on his face so that it couldn't move as much. And it's not good. It's a bad look for sure.
I have in my notes, I think this is set during the time when they think Billy is the Gold Ranger. So the Gold Ranger might have started to show up as like a mystery character.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, they had a bunch of red herrings, right? Like it was like, oh, maybe it's Billy. Oh, maybe it's like Tommy's weird brother that we introduced in one episode.
Didn't he? R.I.P. to Jason David Frank's brother, by the way.
My question about this show, because I know this is a special episode.
Yes.
Did they all seem like after school specials, or was that unique to this episode?
Well, I mean, like in the Mighty Morphin era, at least they would literally have like PSAs after every episode. So kinda, yeah.
But at the same time, at least there was fighting in the other ones.
It felt like a video on diversity that you like have to watch at the courthouse.
It does feel like that. Yeah, it's like the very kind of like awkward explanation of the different like cultural traditions that we're seeing, and then the particular way in which everybody has to apologize to each other at the end after they've like kicked the bad vibes bug or whatever.
After they've recovered from the racist gun.
The racist gun by hearing a really tone-deaf child sing at them.
They misfired the racism gun on all of the Republicans by accident, right afterward.
No, like when the machine guy, I can't remember what is his name, like King Mondo or something like that.
King Mondo, yes.
Is that the guy in the screen?
Says, we're going to use their diversity against them. I was like, oh, he's a Republican politician.
He's come to the future.
Yeah.
No,
King
can I
Mondo's
ask
the robot guy.
Who's the guy in like the screen that the robot talks to?
That's Zordon. He's like their boss.
Why does his mouth not move? Why does his head just like change angles? I don't understand
kind of
that.
does because they only had so much footage of that actor doing stuff, I think. So
they recorded, I believe, if I remember correctly, they recorded all of his facial movements on the first day of Power Rangers, like Mighty Morphin. And then he would just do the voiceovers later on. I
actually have a question about the scenes in the like command center where we see them. So, okay, Zordon gives Alpha 5 a pair of like fuzzy slippers for Christmas. And like, okay, so first of all, how did Zordon shop for that? I don't know. But also, Alpha says like, oh, these will keep my circuits warm all winter. Yeah. Does that mean Alpha's just... Yes, it'll keep the circuits in my feet warm all winter. Does that mean Alpha's just naked all the time? Like, should he be wearing clothes over his robot body?
I mean,
that means somebody built this robot to feel cold and possibly pain.
Mm-hmm. Zordon went down to Venture. He gets decapitated from time to time. Like,
yeah, that's right. They take that head right off.
I do maintain like Zordon is trapped in a permanent time warp, so maybe he just warped to the future, ordered these off of Amazon, and brought them back.
Well, the other thing isn't the enemy of all electronics excessive heat?
Yes, that's true. That's
true. Like, what?
Yeah, maybe his cold feet are working, are his circuits working as intended. So yeah,
they're the heat sinks for his processor.
Speaking of weird plot things, since it's framed as old Tommy telling his grandson the story, how would he even know what the side story, like there's a side story with Bulk and Skull,
right?
And as PIs, and it's like, how would he even know that entire story happened if he wasn't in the room?
Bulk and Skull told them, later on, like, oh, hey, this is how our day went. But I will say, I think the Bulk and Skull stuff in this episode is maybe a highlight because I do think that the two actors playing Bulk and Skull, like you can see like they are pretty good physical performers. Like they've got a physicality to them that I actually really enjoyed. You could tell they were having fun, and I really enjoyed watching them do their shtick.
The wrapping paper joke did not land for me. Though,
no. The writing is terrible. The writing is terrible, definitely. But their physical performance was a lot of fun.
I do enjoy physical comedy. So
yeah. Also, we could just talk about that entire side story right now, since it has nothing to do with the rest of the story.
Yeah, it has it never intersects with the main story at all. So.
Someone's been stealing all the fruitcakes in town, and eventually they go out to what looks like a newly developed housing development out in the valley. And it's like they follow a bunch of pieces of fruitcake to a giant fruitcake that Goldar and Rita Revolto had made for Bulk and Skull.
Out of other fruitcakes, presumably.
Yes.
Which, like, they've somehow managed to make the fruit in the fruitcake giant also, and I don't really understand how that works. I love that effect with them just, like, standing next to this, like, blown up like image of
a fruitcake.
Yeah. It only would have been better if you could like see somebody's hand holding the fruitcake up close to the camera lens to give the impression that it's a giant fruitcake.
Yeah. It's like someone's holding it.
Yeah. And then Skull calls his Aunt Millie on his shoe phone to have her make more fruitcake to replace all the ones
I forgot about that. He's got a Get Smart shoe phone.
Yeah, I was just like, what the hell is this? Like, I didn't even understand.
No, I don't even know what you're talking about. Kids, before cell phones, this is how we all communicated in the 90s when we weren't at home. We all had shoe phones.
Yeah.
We were all inexplicably really big fans of Get Smart. Clearly somebody on that set was a huge fan of that show, and that's why they were like, oh, we need to put a shoe phone in here. Like, why do we need to put a shoe phone? Shut up! I want to put a shoe phone in here.
So my other question is this the only episode where no one like gets into a Power Rangers costume and does Power Ranger-y things?
I don't know if this is the only episode.
It might not be the only one, but it's definitely very rare.
Like they did nothing to help their situation. That awkward little girl just came in and started singing.
Yeah.
Like who is accompanying that?
I don't know.
So let's set the scene. The Rangers and their Jewish friend Raymond are all doing some sort of like holiday celebration at the community center or Ernie's Juice Bar, and like the set has already been like struck down. It's just like a wide open room with like a table or two.
Yeah, I didn't even realize they were in the juice bar.
It looks like a high school auditorium.
Yeah.
It looks like a room.
Yeah.
Everything about this episode screams bottle episode. Like,
including the outtakes at the end where like you could tell that they're just completely over recording. But yeah, so apparently everyone is Christian except for their Jewish friend Raymond and was that Tanya?
Tanya, yeah.
Okay. I always forget where Aisha comes in and leaves.
I think you can still. Can't you still be Christian and celebrate Kwanzaa too?
Yes, I think so.
Because one of the things is faith, so they could have any number of faiths.
It's more like a cultural.
This was the 90s era where Kwanzaa was put up as like, oh, it's another Christmas style holiday, like Hanukkah, which is also not a Christmas style holiday.
No.
They just happen to
they just happen to be around the same time.
Yes. Can I just say, aren't there 8 candles?
Plus the lighter in the middle.
Okay, so I was like, I'm counting 9. Every time it comes on screen, I'm counting 9.
Right. So the one in the middle, I'm a little Jewish, so I can tell you it's called the Shabbos. It's the candle you use to light the other candles with.
Good to know.
So you start out with
I mean, I'm not good at counting, but
I also learned recently that a menorah is the one with 3 prongs on each side, whereas the Hanukkah menorah is a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. So that's it is one of the things that I think is kind of a bummer about this episode is that
we learned nothing about religious faiths.
Exactly.
They name drop all these. Like Tanya gets to explain Kwanzaa a little bit, which I thought was cool, but I wish they had maybe gone into a little bit more about, like what Hanukkah is and things like that. Everybody sort of brings something.
Why
to the
Rocky
table.
had a piñata for
what was
Christmas.
The Asian American person's comment?
They don't even celebrate anything. He doesn't know what he's doing here.
Right.
I think it's interesting to see what we have in common as well as what's different before Sprocket hit them.
Yes, yeah.
Like I didn't even realize Adam was Korean. I'm going to be honest, and like I was like afterwards, I'm like, it's Adam Park. I should have realized that. But
no,
I don't know if the show realized he was Korean outside of this
Johnny
episode.
Young Bosch is half Korean, the actor.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I liked Rocky yells something about tamales and a piñata.
Yep.
Oh,
which
wow.
I had to Google, and that is actually how Christmas is celebrated in Mexico.
Again, if they weren't going to do any Power Ranger stuff, like just lean into this and just make it a full on educational show about different holiday traditions and stuff. Like, I'm cool with that. I think that works better than what they tried to do here.
I mean, the thing here is like they try to have a little bit of a lesson about, diversity and respecting other people's like, traditions. But like the show can't really have the Power Rangers like actually be like particularly flawed people in any way. So the whole thing is like entirely the fault of the racism gun. And then once they get like the spell broken, they just like say these like kind of pat phrases about like how we need to respect each other, and then everyone is fine and just it moves on from it.
I almost wanted like King Mondo to say something like, "See, racism is a personal problem. It's not systemic at all." Ha 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 ha.
I don't, but our little children brains wouldn't have understood the irony back then. I think so to me, I don't know if this is a fact, but I feel like this episode had maybe a minute and a half worth of Japanese clips. And like, I think they found the episode where Sprocket has a pile of stuff and a piñata, and we're like, how can we turn this into an episode? And then created this episode around it. Like,
yeah, I think that's probably right, because they definitely did not have anything beyond that was like holiday appropriate from the Japanese footage to use in this.
Right.
Like, I mean, at least when like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, when they did the Halloween episode, they had the pumpkin wrapper.
Yeah.
Pumpkin wrapping is about to happen, and then it did.
And all the pumpkins on their heads, and I think I need to admit this. As a kid, I didn't realize until Power Rangers Turbo that they were cutting away to Japanese footage.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely took me a while to realize as well. Like, I didn't understand when they made the movie why the suits looked so different. I was like, and then later on, I was like, oh, that's because they like made their own versions of the suits, and they had like money because it was a movie, so they made them like really different. I
remember it so vividly. I was watching, and it's like the Red Ranger's like on his little go-kart thing, and then they cut to Japanese footage and it's like suddenly it's like gloomy and in like Osaka, and like, oh, that's Japanese footage that they're using for all the fight scenes. I didn't realize that, so that just came back to me. I had to share it.
I remember when that finally clicked for me, which like probably wasn't until years later either, and it was like, oh, that's why the Green Ranger shield in some of the footage looks like an awesome like rigid thing, and it looks like friggin' gold fabric in other footage.
And like, well, even in the American footage, it's like, why half the time it's like stiff and half the time it's like off colored and
that's what she said. Sorry.
Okay. Also, I asked the question: do we ever see their Jewish friend Raymond again after this episode or before this episode? He's in the episode Mean Screen, where he's a tech genius and stops a computer virus.
Of a stereotype? No, not really. If he was like a tax accountant, I suppose that would be.
I said tech, not tax.
Yeah. I will say, like, if anybody listening to this podcast needs an idea of what this guy looks like, Raymond, I have to assume that if I were to check his IMDb, he is like the guy from all the Game Genie commercials.
He looked like Kenny G.
I had a Game Shark. He does look like Kenny G.
Oh, yeah.
I had a
Kenny
Game Shark,
G with
I'm sorry.
radical firepower.
Kenny, a little bit like Kenny G. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, okay. I see that.
I had a Game Shark. I don't remember the Game Genie commercials. Sorry to let you down.
Okay, it's all right. It's all right. I forgive you.
By the way, earlier I said the Hanukkah candle was called the Shabbos. I'm very tired tonight, so I said the wrong Jewish word. It's Shamas. I just wanted to say that because
before the comments come in.
So you are now canceled forever.
I am extremely canceled. Yeah.
But they uncancel the holiday with the little girl that sings. We've actually determined that one of the new cliches that we found in the 12 Days of Christmas specials this year is that people just randomly breaking into songs seem to cure everything.
So you guys have watched a lot of Christmas specials at this point.
Yes.
Is this the worst one, or have you seen ones that are worse than this?
I have to be honest. The Xena Warrior Princess one was particularly awful.
How do they even do a Christmas
and
episode?
And not because it was actually
they
that
had the
bad.
baby Jesus in it as well.
It was that they crammed every Christmas story and the birth of Christ into
Santa.
One episode.
Yeah,
and Santa.
That sounds pretty bad.
Yeah.
I gotta say,
I'm gonna be honest. I kind of enjoyed it for how bad it was.
The watchability was much better.
I enjoy the show, but it was bad.
This was hot trash. I mean, it was really bad.
I don't think we've had a worse one. Or personally, I don't think
because my reaction to this was like, this is the worst piece of Christmas media I've ever seen.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that it was like I was already, because I have not gone back to these old Power Rangers shows at all. I was not expecting a lot, but I was at least expecting It's Morphin Time at some point, or whatever the Zeo equivalent of that is.
It's Morphin Time.
Okay. And when that didn't happen, I was like, because like I hadn't told Emmy, or like Emmy hadn't watched it yet, and I kept debating like, okay, do I tell her actually like how bad this is? That's probably not fair, right? Or do I just ask them if it's too late to do dinosaurs? Like, what do we?
I just have to be careful not to send too much to Brandon after, because I watched it and I just sent wow.
Yeah.
Or just wow.
And I started by saying, enjoy the worst episode of Power Rangers ever.
Yeah, it kind of is. I mean, it's just, there's just so much that it just breaks the mold of Power Rangers that I'm just like, why? Why isn't Ernie's like a bustling place like it normally is?
So they took out the gym mats and like nothing is there. Like, the bar's gone. Look,
I understand Ernie's is an anomaly. It's a juice bar that's also a gym and everything else. But like,
it's a youth center.
Yeah. It's awesome. And I want a place like that to actually exist. So, okay, we'll put that in our 90s village.
Yes. Ernie's juice bar for concessions. Yeah. And hip hop keto. So the episode ends with flash forwarding to the future again with Tommy. And Kat comes out and they're married and it's their grandson and their son comes to pick up their grandson.
Another grandson.
Yes, the brother of the
grandson. Yeah.
Wow. And the grandson is the Red Ranger and Tommy looks for his communicator when the communicator goes off.
Honestly, by that point I had checked out. I had no idea what was going on with that.
You could see Rocky skipping off in the background and like when they all go to let's go something fix Christmas for everyone. You can see like he's completely over it and like the actor's just like skipping out of frame.
Like they don't fix the problem in this at all. Like they just sort of get over it. A girl sings. They don't get like the presents back or anything. They just kind of go and like get new stuff. Like it's like this is like what would happen if like at the end of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the Grinch saw all the Who's singing and then he was like, well, that happened. And then just goes home. Like then just like goes back into the mountain.
I also thought it was dumb that while she was singing, they had to show each and every person like becoming unaffected by the racism gun.
Hey, they spent $5 whole on that visual effect of the beam affecting them. So they had to use every penny.
If we didn't see everybody getting, unracist, we would have no idea if that person was still racist or not.
That's a good point.
Or like, how would we know where the movie Power Rangers Turbo starts?
That's right.
Show, don't tell.
Let's see. The final, what was I going to? Oh, I did think of one episode of Christmas specials that might have been just as bad. It was the Lois and Clark. Twas the Night Before Mixmas.
I blocked it out.
We watched that for
like
Christmas
the Howie Mandel?
Yes.
Mixes Pitlick.
Wow.
Oh no.
Good memory.
Real bad.
Dressed like Prince.
Howie Mandel played what?
Mr.
Middle Piddlesick.
What?
Missy.
The like
and he
dimensional imp.
Dressed up like Prince from Purple Rain.
You're gonna like that episode.
That was
you've already heard
number 4. So Link, you said you had a quick treatment for the episode.
Possibly? I was watching this and I thought, I think I could fix this episode. I think I could turn this into something absolutely brilliant. Well, not brilliant, but better than what it is. If I can find my notes.
One of them is not cured from the racism ray and then becomes president in the future.
Yeah. So I mean, my whole issue with these sorts of diversity messages that we were all fed back in the day is, I mean, there's a couple of problems that I've got with them, but the big one might be the idea that like, Tanya saying, yeah, well, your Christmas stuff is stupid to a white guy is equivalent to a white guy saying, hey, I don't want any of your Kwanzaa stuff here. Like those aren't equivalent positions because one of those is way more loaded. Mm-hmm. So I don't like that. And then kind of what I alluded to earlier, like this idea that bias and racism are these big personal problems, and if we all just do better, then we can fix it, and it completely ignores like the systemic issues that intrinsic to these kinds of problems. And
you mean half the country just wasn't shot by a racism ray?
Yeah. It turns out that
recently?
that's not. Yeah. Unless I don't know, our founding fathers got hit by a racism ray. I don't know, but
very true.
We just never recovered.
Oh, we just need to find more little girls to sing all around the country Christmas songs.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're derailing.
No. If only Haim Saban's niece or whoever the hell that was can come back and
sing flatly.
Yeah, exactly. There were 3 kids in that episode that are completely uncredited, and even the Power Rangers wiki does not know who they are.
They gotta be like the kids of executives. Those are not, even for child actors, those were like pretty rough.
Yeah. But
yes.
But anyway, so I'm not saying it was up to Power Rangers or any kids show in the 90s to completely, stop the problems that we're still having. But I think that like they could have at least handled these sorts of messages better. So anyway, here is my kind of treatment for this episode that not only, I hope would have a better kind of message to it, but also has an actual Power Ranger fight, even though it would have to be brief because there's a lot here. So first of all, when we leave out all the Tommy grandpa stuff because it's just completely unnecessary. We don't need it.
Horrible.
Yeah. So we're just going to open at Ernie's. It's actually bustling, and Raymond and Bulk and Skull and the Rangers are all getting things ready. Bulk and Skull are doing their wacky antics. Tanya and Raymond get to talk about their holidays. And, since I don't think any of them are actually like white, like Rocky, Tommy, and Adam all could probably offer their own unique perspectives. This was another weird thing about this episode is that Tommy is sort of positioned as like the mean American white guy, even though like he's been pretty well established as Native American by this point, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because they lost the white guy to the pure white guy.
Don't worry, he'll be back.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Gold Ranger.
Yeah, so Tanya and Raymond offer to display some of their holiday accoutrement, and this is around the time when Bulk and Skull get dragged away by the I don't even know what that guy's name is, because he's discovered that all of Ernie's fruitcakes have been stolen. So it
ties into the story. It ties in more.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to tie in, and Bulk and Skull are going to leave Ernie's and then come back to Ernie's, so it all wraps up nice. So it's around this time that the Machine Empire reveals their plan to use their bias blaster on everyone in Angel Grove. Sprocket, I guess that's that kid's name, arrives at Ernie's. I'm looking at my notes for the first time in a couple of weeks here.
Prince Sprocket, yes.
Sprocket arrives at Ernie's, attacks him with the bias blaster, which only affects the non-Ranger characters. After he leaves, and conversations turn to arguments, and the Christmas celebrating patrons begin insisting that any other mentions of non-Christmas holidays need to be removed. Everybody gets really mean. Tanya and Raymond are told to take their decorations and leave, and they do so, obviously very upset. King Mondo implements a better plan B than whatever his plan B was in the original episode. He is going to actually unleash a monster now that the Rangers are split up and are bickering and distracted. So as they don't have an actual monster from the Japanese footage for this episode, I thought, okay, let's just do something really, really easy and cheap. They're just going to have a guy in a white suit with a great six-pack, the abdominal snowman.
Yes.
So
that joke works for me.
All right. The ground begins to shake. The Rangers realize there is trouble on the way, but they don't know where Tanya went. And now Rocky and Adam are even feeling a bit weary of everybody else as everyone is getting more agitated and frightened. Tommy tries to calm everyone down by saying that the Power Rangers are going to save them. And Kat gives an impassioned speech about how the Power Rangers don't discriminate. They're going to help these people no matter what. They don't care what their background is or anything like that. And this starts getting everybody, realizing what jerks they've been. So also there's not going to be a little girl singing. So
that's a good
apologies to whoever's daughter or niece that was.
Good resolution.
Yeah. So they all go to the command center. Turns out Tanya's already there. The other Rangers teleport in just as Tanya tearfully tells Zordon and Alpha that she, feels discriminated and disrespected in her own community and doesn't know what to do, and she feels alone. The other Rangers gather around her, telling her that no matter what the rest of Angel Grove does, they're her family, and she always has a place with them where she's safe, respected, and loved. The Rangers share a group hug that Alpha can't help but join in on. Zordon tells them that the strong bond they share is the greatest gift he could ask for because this is Power Rangers, but there's still a crisis, so you ought to probably go kill that monster. So everybody quickly morphs. We do a quick Zord thing. Zord, POW, Zoom, Sword / whatever. The abdominal snowman is destroyed very quickly. Meanwhile, Bulk and Skull's story goes on pretty much as it did originally because it was great. No notes on that, except for instead of calling his poor put upon aunt to remake all the fruitcakes when they find the giant one, he just calls for a forklift instead. So we go back to Ernie's. Raymond has been cowering in the parking lot ever since all this happened. So they find him, help him up, and say, hey, we're going to go back to the party with you if you want to. And if you're still feeling, like you're being disrespected here, we will all leave together. He agrees to that. But when they go back inside, everybody is apologizing to Tanya and everybody else, saying, hey, your decorations are more than welcome here. We can't believe what jerks we were. Just as Bulk and Skull arrive with a holiday surprise for everyone in the form of a giant fruitcake being carried in on the forklift.
All of this proving that violence is the answer to racism. Wait,
that's right.
Hold on.
That is a much better woven together story, as well as it's that attacks the actual issue much better than singing with
something like that
song.
could make it onto CBS.
Yeah, no, that's TGI Friday material right there.
All right. Well, I'll keep that one in mind then for our Power Rangers RP podcast that we'll do sometime next year. So,
all right. Definitely remember the character abdominal snowman.
Abdominal snowman.
Because Zed and Rita could make things change into their monsters, if I remember correctly. So that's why all of the gym stuff was gone from Ernie's, right?
Yeah, right.
they transformed it all into monsters by now.
It's too much of a risk, yeah.
All right. Well, so does anyone have any final thoughts on a season to remember?
I don't think it was a season to remember personally. I think it was a season to forget.
Yeah, I think I might have already forgotten a lot of it.
Absolutely.
It felt like someone wheeled an AV cart into my living room and popped in this video, and I had to watch it. It's like an after school special. That's what it felt like.
At least the Power Rangers didn't tell you not to drink and drive, So
that was the Turbo Christmas episode.
Okay. Oh yeah, it would be right. Yeah.
Oh, that was Alpha's Magical Christmas or whatever it was.
Yeah. It was a bottle of schnapps. All right. Well, that's it for this holiday edition of Namely 90s. Tune in. I think Monday, the 3rd, for our first episode of 2022 that we recorded still in 2021. So it's not new, but it's new to you. So listen in. Thank you to SteampunkLink and EmmyZero of SNEScapades for coming on. Can you let our listeners know where to find you too?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for having us and for indulging my ridiculous little screen doctor.
Absolutely.
Or script doctoring. Yeah, you can find us basically on any podcast app. We are the SNEScapades podcast, and you can find me on Twitter at SNEScapades or Instagram at SNEScapades. You can go to our website at honestpiranha.com if you want to see the actual list. And I think that's about it.
That's gonna be it. I don't have any social media presence really, so if you want to hear more of me, listen to the podcast, we would love to have you as a listener.
All right. And as always, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at namely90s with 90s, or find our personal accounts at bshwitty and at namelyanndrew and tell us what you want us to talk about in this new year. If you would like to support the show, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/namely90s, also with a 90s. Finally, you can also contact us through our website, namely90s.com. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Zeo Crystal, YouTube, TuneIn, iHeart. I said a lot of these already. And wherever you got your podcasts from. I'm Brandon. That's Andrew. Thank you one final time to SteampunkLink and EmmyZero of SNEScapades. That's SNEScapades. And thank you to everyone who has listened to our 12 Days of Christmas specials. We'll be back Monday with our first regular episode of 2022. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Power axe.
Powered bow. Why did I go bow?